I want you to ask yourself, like, how much do you feel as a person watching this, like you can have healthy discussions with people with opposing views from you? If the answer is it actually feels really tricky, you're first of all not alone. I mean, millions and millions of people are feeling this way, but what are the costs of not being able to have healthy discussions? Like if you think that you're sitting here and you're like, you know what, but my opinions are correct. Well, still, what is the cost? If you're sure that your opinions are correct, what is the cost of not being able to have healthy discussions with people who have opinions that you would deem not correct? And is it possible that we actually have some things to learn from one another, even if we feel really strongly about our views? Are there things that we could learn in the nuances? Are there even just things we could learn about people with different points of view and why they're there and what we could do to be part of a solution in these instances in different cases? And I think that because of all of this, like, the way that things are being portrayed in such extreme forms, just on the television screen, just from your local news channel, things like this. I think unfortunately, it's like we see one person with one opinion and we automatically pigeonhole them into it's all or nothing thinking, which is a cognitive distortion. And psychology will tell us this. And so when we look at these things, I want you to ask yourself, am I in a position in my life where I've pigeonholed other people with differing views? And is it possible that we actually might agree on many more things than we think, than we would even disagree on, but we aren't having those discussions and so we wouldn't know? Is that a possibility? Because, I've had countless discussions personally with people and just realized like, hey, there's actually nowhere near as much division in society as we are thinking. It's more being portrayed that way. And don't get me wrong, there are still extremes out there for sure. But I would say the vast majority of people are not as polarized as they would think, but the illusion stops us from even realizing that. So, what do we do? Well, one of my favorite quotes ever, probably my favorite quote, top two for sure, is something I read in a book a long, long time ago. And it said, "He who hates evil only creates more of it." And I think that it's very easy to get into a dynamic in our lives where we see something that we don't agree with and we don't like it. And we think that the healthy and rational response is to hate it or to resist it or to get angry at it. But that's not it's again, it's like trying to solve the problem at the same level of thinking that created it. We are literally seeing something we disagree with, hating it or detesting it or getting angry about it, and then fighting the problem. And all fighting the problem will ever do, and you'll see this in countless areas of life, is it will keep us stuck at an individual level. And because the individual level eventually makes up the collective, we will see those same patterns and themes emerging. See, we have to ask ourselves this question. If I see something I strongly disagree with and it angers me, my way to deal with that anger is not going to be to express it and project it in unhealthy ways onto other people. My way to deal with that anger is going to be to work through that anger within me and then come up with a way to be part of a solution rather than to just fight a problem. Whatever we're fighting, we are always feeding. And I'll give you an example of this. As somebody who went through really big addiction challenges as a young teenager, that I've talked about many times on this platform, I remember having a very difficult experience where I would fight. I would say, I'm not going to do this again. I'm gonna, I would tell I would tell myself all the things I'm not going to do. I'll give you an even simpler example. If you are somebody who is trying to eat healthy, you can't be like, don't eat cookies, don't eat chocolate, don't eat cake. You have to be like, oh, I'm going to eat salads and smoothies and get my nutrients and take my vitamins and I'm going to move my body. There's a difference there between being against the problem versus for the solution. Here's why. We have something called the ironic processing theory in psychology, which is literally all about how your conscious mind can't hear the knots. And remember, your subconscious mind is the one running the show. So if I say, do not think of the pink elephant, you saw a pink elephant in your mind's eye. It came because your subconscious mind does not speak language, it speaks in emotion and imagery. And so when we are in a position in our lives where we want to see change at the individual level and thus the collective level, we can't fight a problem. We can't be like, don't do this, don't do that. We have to be like, no, here's how I'm going to be for the solution. Here's how I am going to invest my time. If we look on social media and we spend time getting angry about the things we don't like, we are creating more anger in the world. Pain will not solve for pain. So we have to instead be like, okay, what can I do to be part of a solution? Now, here's the next step that I think people get wrong, unfortunately, sometimes. Is it sometimes, and I get this because I've been there, sometimes we then go, it's too big for just me. It's I can't do anything. This problem is way beyond me. And I think that's where we then get into complacency and then we get into learned helplessness and more frustration. But guess what? Nobody is going to fix the problems in the world that they don't like alone. And it isn't your job to do it all. It isn't your job to fix everything at once. It is your job to pick one or two very small, feasible things that you can do in relationship to the problems you don't like in the world. That could be donating $5 every 2 weeks to a charity that's part of a solution. That could be, educating people on things that you think will help them. That could be so many different things. It doesn't have to be huge. But I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to take all of your energy spinning your wheels in learned helplessness, being against the problem that makes you feel more frustrated, more alone, more polarized. And it's going to help you feel like you have a meaning and a sense of significance by being part of a solution in some specific form. And I want you to ask yourself now, too, like when you look at these things that you don't like or you don't agree with in the world, are you fighting the problem or are you being for the solution? And what is your balance there? Are you spending 90% of the time fighting the problem, being angry at the problem, writing comments on social media that aren't healthy or are not helping you, versus being for the solution would be to manage how, number one, how these things make you feel, like actually to work through your feelings around these issues. What core wounds are being touched? What unmet needs do you have? How are these things affecting you? And to make sure you're giving yourself space to deal with your emotions. Number two, to make sure that you are not fighting the problem, but instead being for the solution, right? And to be mindful, number three, about the input you're taking in. Repetition and emotion is programming us. We don't want to just take in things that are going to make us not feel good or feel angry or feel depressed or feel sad. So we also want to have some emotional boundaries there. And if we can do that, we will derive a sense of being able to handle the things that we're seeing around us in a different way. It doesn't mean that any pain or suffering is going away, but it means that we will feel better about the situation. And I think number four, we have to be able to get into a place where we can talk to people. And, that can be working on conflict communication. That can be doing the work to make sure that we're having discussions differently or trying to with people in our lives and trying to actually hear people out, remembering that often people with a difference of opinion than a lot of the things we look at, right, we think on a surface level are so different, but often it's our programming about them that's different. So I'll just look at a very simple example. If we look at like mothers, let's say, who really are for, vaccinating their kids and mothers who are really against vaccinating their kids. I mean, you can imagine how much friction there can be there. At the root level, both parties literally are just there caring about their children's health. I mean, the root of why they're both so passionate about these alternate sides is that they care about the health of their children. There's more in common at a root level than we would think. If we look at so many of the other things that are going on in the world, a lot of them, are that people are really caring about people, wanting to see the well-being of people, caring about people being hurt in the world, caring about people feeling alone in the world. And so they have different programs about are causing the issues. But we don't need to be in a place where we can't have healthy discussions when we probably have a little bit more in common in certain instances than we think. And I'll say one last thing. This video is not me advocating with you trying to, if you have somebody who's like so extreme, unwilling to budge, incapable of having a healthy discussion, This video is not me saying, go figure it out. It's all on you. This video is me saying, let's talk about how to have healthy discussions. Let's try where we can. Let's not be so opposed to listening to somebody with a difference of opinion. Let's get back as individuals the ability to have conversations with people we disagree with and just to see what we can learn, even if you only learn how they got there. Even if that's all you learn from the experience, you have a little bit of compassion or understanding for them rather than seeing them as an enemy. Because I cannot tell you how much seeing other people as an enemy, your fellow human beings as an enemy, will hurt you. So even if it's just having understanding or compassion for people of a difference of opinion, like maybe trying to learn that would be really, really valuable in your life. Sometimes but so anyway, so this is not me saying go to like the extremes and try to hash things out with people there. But I'm saying, let's stop being afraid. Let's stop being afraid to talk about things. Let's stop being afraid to hold space for somebody with a difference of opinion than us. Let's learn to manage our own anger, our own frustration around things that really dig at us, because that's there to propel us to a new level of growth. If things that you're really passionate about and that really affect you, if you can learn to manage your emotions around those things, you're going to be so much stronger for it. So let's learn to stop being afraid of these discussions, of how we're going to feel around these things. And let's work on like stopping the cycle of like division through being against the problem and instead being for the solution. Because as I mentioned earlier, that phenomenal quote is, he who hates evil only creates more of it. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say for today. If you want support around this, if you want discussions around this, please let me know what you want to see and hear on this channel about these things. I'd be happy to put some like conflict communication steps and tools for having difficult discussions out here. Obviously, my wheelhouse is everything to do with attachment styles, the subconscious mind, psychology, but it doesn't mean that I'm opposed to having discussions about other topics. So if you need support on this topic, please let me know what that looks like for you. I'm definitely going to come back and read through every comment on this video, and I'd love to hear what you have to say or what you want to share. So thank you so much for listening. I hope this is helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos.